Hello.
Alrighty, guys. Well,
We have a cocktail today.
we do. This is for Andolin.
I'm so excited to chase this.
It is
To chase this?
Taste.
Oh,
I
this.
thought you said chase too,
Yeah,
and
I
I'm
think
like,
you did
we don't
say
have
chase.
anything to chase it with. It's a Ryan Reynolds cocktail with his he has a gin company called Aviation. It's called Watermelon Summer.
Mm.
And,
This is great.
So this is for Andolin. Why are you tasting it before the song?
Shit, sorry. I would look too good.
wait, is this the shot?
We don't have a shot.
This is what she requested.
This is her
Oh.
request. So, surprise drink. We don't know what it is, even though that we do.
I've already drank some.
So what is in this, Jen?
This is gin, watermelon juice, simple syrup, and triple sec. It's pretty simple to make. I didn't have enough watermelon juice, and there's chunks of watermelon in it too. I didn't have enough of like the real watermelon juice, so I used a bubbly, like the brand Bubbly has a watermelon sparkling drink.
Delightful. Thank you, Andolin, for being so kind to us.
Thank you.
Not everyone is nice to us when we get shot and drink requests.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Hope everyone's having a good day.
We are.
Yeah, I mean it's a good day. I feel weird.
Hey, Sarah.
Why do you
Thanks
feel?
for joining.
Why do you feel weird?
I don't know. I think I forgot to take my medicine yesterday, so I'm like, I don't know.
A little off.
Yeah.
I'm a little hungover. So
All right, so let's start the story.
let's do this thing.
We're going right here to the CVS. Look at that.
Lovely.
CVS tonight.
Get some coupons,
Some
you know?
CVS. Dunkin'. Have you ever
Oh.
been to Philadelphia?
Yes. My sister and brother-in-law went to Villanova.
Oh, okay.
So went to visit many a time.
It says it's right here. I mean, obviously it's torn down, but I thought it would have something. Oh, yeah. Well, this is where we're going
A
to.
sign.
It's a historical marker.
Yeah, historical marker. It used to be a big prison right here.
Oh.
Like a huge prison.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
See this parking lot?
Yeah.
And yeah, it used to be like all of this.
Were there a lot of ghosts in this prison and that's why
Probably.
they tore it down?
I don't know if that's why they tore it down, but I'd be willing to put money on the fact that it was haunted.
No, I think Philadelphia just got rid of crime altogether, so they don't need one.
Nailed it.
We are going to the Moyaminsing prison, the state prison. This is
Okay.
what it looked like back in the day, yo. You know, this was a maximum security prison for the worst of the worst.
Looks pretty intense of a prison. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. So tonight I am starting this story on May 7th, 1896. We're going to the Moyaminsing prison, and it is about 10:30. About 10:30
AM or PM?
a.m.
Okay.
Yeah, a.m.
I figured you would use military time if you met them. So
Mm.
in which case I wouldn't have known what time it was.
I would know that though.
Actually, let's start the night before. May 6, 1896. We're starting the night before around 10 p.m. A prisoner who is at this prison is spending his last night on earth in the prison. He is tearful and woeful, and he is under the watch of a keeper, George Weaver. This prisoner is so terrible, so heinous, and so manipulative that the warden had months prior assigned a special task force of the best prison guards he can find. They also went through additional training just to watch this guy. They would do shifts. They would do 12-hour shifts. They would sit watching the cell of this man, this criminal. Their chair would be pushed up against the cement wall because they didn't want anyone going around. And they had to do nothing else but to watch this prisoner like a hawk, because this guy, he can manipulate anyone. It is even said that he could hypnotize people just by looking at them.
Spooky.
Almost instantly. He had these big blue eyes, and he actually trained himself to hypnotize people.
I do have a question though. Was he woeful because of like the fact that he was going to die, or was he woeful because he was facing what he had done? Or was he actually not woeful at all and he was hypnotizing them to think that he was?
Yeah, I just one of the old papers said tearful and woeful, so I put that.
Oh.
The prison guard George Weaver, he is the keeper. Now, the prison warden assigned these 3 excellent guards to not only watch this guy, but he instructed them to not talk to him, because this man is going to try to talk. He is going to try to get in your mind. He is going to try to do something to get you under his influence. So even when he talks, just don't say a word. However, the prison warden, that demand kind of fell through months ago because all 3 guards are now great friends with this guy. That's how dangerous and manipulative this guy can be. All right.
Sociopath for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. But it is May 6th. In less than 12 hours, this guy is going to be hanged until he is dead. And so this is his last night in his cell. The book that you're reading now is from the great-great-grandson of this man. The prisoner's name is Herman Mudgett. So this is from the great-great-grandson.
From Bloodstains by Jeff Mudgett, 24 hours a day, prison guards sat indirectly across from the maximum security cell, watching Holmes through the steel bars. He was the only inmate given his own watch, 1 guard for 1 prisoner. The guard sat with his back to the concrete wall. There was no door, window, or other cell opposite Holmes.
Obviously, Herman Mudgett is H.H. Holmes. It's just one of his many aliases. He's got 10 or 20 at least.
Wow. At first, when you said he was given his own watch, I thought that he was so influential he actually got to keep his personal belongings.
Oh, I actually thought that too. And yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The wall allowed that guard to watch his prisoner without having to worry about what was at his back. Holmes guards were specially trained to monitor the conduct of the most dangerous human beings in the world. They were trained to notice anything, no matter how small or out of the ordinary. For this, they were the highest paid guards in the prison system. They were maximum security for the maximum threat.
All right, so we are talking about H.H. Holmes tonight, otherwise known as Herman Mudgett. And we're reading from several books, but the excerpt she just read from is from the great-great-grandson, Jeff. H.H. Holmes was a master manipulator. He could hypnotize anyone within a few minutes of just staring directly into their eyes. Jeff talks about this in his book, that his great-great-granddad was known to purposely catch your gaze and not turn away. However, most people would be like, what the hell is this guy looking at? However, with Holmes, you don't think that. You just fall into these eyes. And eventually he can actually suggest things to you, hypnotic suggestions, and make you do things. This is all real because the warden was so afraid that something was going to go wrong. These maximum security guards had to watch him all the time. And not only that, they couldn't talk to him. But guess what? Now they're like best friends over the months. And I can tell you later how he did that. But he had befriended every one of these guards. The night before his hanging, H.H. Holmes stretches himself out on his little bunk. He had just wrote a bunch of letters to victim, friends, family, anyone. Okay. We will never get to see those letters. And he stretches out. It's around midnight and he tells the guard, "Good night, and I'll see you tomorrow." In fact, he says, quote, "I don't know where I will sleep tomorrow night," but nobody knows that. H.H. Holmes closes his eyes and he falls asleep. The guard looks into his cell. He sees those neatly folded letters on the desk because H.H. Holmes is immaculate with his things and his appearance. Everything, his suit that he was going to wear the next day, completely pressed, no wrinkles. And he had the money to do this because, as you'll see, H.H. Holmes was wealthy, extremely wealthy.
Wonder where he got his money from then. I'm sure we'll get into it.
Wasn't he a hotelier?
No, he won the lottery.
Oh.
We haven't covered the case yet. I don't know.
He won the South Carolina Powerball lottery.
Damn, that's who won.
The guard looks into the cell. He sees these neatly folded letters on the desk, a crucifix completely level right above H.H. Holmes, who is now sound asleep. He sees these 2 well-worn slippers, never to be worn again. And from The Torture Doctor by David Frank, he had come to know Holmes better than anyone else, and he was heavy-hearted. This guard was so upset that he will lose one of his new best friends.
Did they not think what he did was true, or they just didn't care? They thought he was just such a nice guy, you know?
That's a good question.
Like, did he trick them into thinking like, oh, it wasn't me? That's how.
We'll get into it.
Okay.
6 a.m. the next morning, May 7th, he had slept hard the night before. Quote, so sound were his slumbers, in fact, that twice he was called before awakening. They had to shake him vigorously to awaken him. They ask him, how do you feel? And he says, quote, I have never slept better in my life.
Until you woke me up. Did they think that maybe he did something so that he would die in his sleep, and they wanted to make sure that he didn't get the pleasure of dying in his sleep?
No, he was just really calm.
He slept great, which you wouldn't think he would the night before being executed. From The Torture Doctor, the thought that he was doing everything for the last time did not seem to affect him at all.
He gets up. He is in a good mood. He orders a hearty breakfast of eggs, toast, and coffee.
No
and
bacon?
That's his final meal.
Yeah, they didn't really do final meals back then, I don't think. So it was just...
Well, at least he got to have eggs. It's not like they just gave him gruel or anything.
Well, here's the thing about that. So all the prisoners were served gruel or whatever. However, Holmes had befriended these guards, and he was now being served what the guards are served. I mean, he's drinking coffee.
Yeah.
And eggs and toast. They're serving him like he is
Dining at a restaurant.
authority. Yeah, exactly. He's given things. He wasn't supposed to have letters, writing utensils, none of that. He's got everything he could ask for. He even tells the guards at some point to take their chairs and move down the hall so he can have alone time. And they do it, which is crazy. That's how much he had them, right?
Wow.
What are you thinking? Jerk time? Is that what you're thinking? Maybe he just wanted to be alone.
I don't know. What else do you think?
I mean, my head went to
right. Like he just wanted some alone time. Okay.
His lawyer was one of the first ones to see him, and he noticed that Holmes looked really well rested. Holmes said he was, and in fact, he put out his arm and he said, look, no trembling. This guy is about to die within 4 hours. The floor is going to drop out from beneath his feet.
Like a roller coaster.
Cool as a cucumber.
And he has no tremble. I know you were thinking that, Andalyn. One last jerk. Can I get one last jerk for the road? One last jerk.
But I mean, I feel like...
What else is a prisoner doing in his alone time?
Well, yeah,
I mean, the guards to look away.
I feel like if I was a guard, I wouldn't want to be around for that. Could you imagine just like being there and like this prisoner, just like making eye contact with you?
Well, it reminds me of that scene from Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, where he throws the ejaculate.
Gross.
I wonder what the one last jerk would like. What was he thinking of? You know,
some serious ankle. You know, maybe some collarbone.
The last load. All right.
Also, when I heard gruel, I thought of Mean Girls when she gruel.
He is walked to the gallows, which is inside the prison walls, not outside like usual. His execution will be private and intimate. Only 51 people are allowed to see H.H. Holmes get hanged this morning, although there were thousands outside of the prison walls, and they were not rowdy.
That is quite a gathering for that. Though.
Oh, yeah. They were completely silent, waiting for the moment so they could hear the floor drop.
Oh,
completely silent outside. This, as we'll talk about, H.H. Holmes, I've seen papers in Germany and Ireland and Australia all covering this case.
This was the case of the century then.
Exactly.
Because it was at the end of the century.
No one will top it. Yeah, I like that.
Everyone on live chat is just saying H.H. loads.
They're coming up with your title for you.
I'm not using HH loads.
What about the
HH
last load?
Oh my gosh.
I'm not using that.
All right, clearly there's more to the story that we're going to cover today other than alone time.
I need alone time to think of a title.
The entire city and from people were coming in from around the country knowing that they will not be able to see it because these 51 tickets, I mean, this was more demanding than a Taylor Swift concert, right? I mean, think about if Taylor Swift just gave out 51 tickets. I mean, there would be like a bloodbath.
Oh yeah, complete mayhem.
Around this time, it is 9:30 a.m. He is visited by two priests and the sheriff, who he is also quite cordial with, and also his personal lawyer, Samuel P. Rotan. And this is usually never allowed. The lawyers, as we just covered Gacy's case, John Wayne Gacy, and Karen Conti said she wasn't allowed to see the execution. So this is something that goes back hundreds of years. A lawyer, your personal lawyer, cannot witness your execution. However, as with other strange things, Holmes was allowed that, among other things.
I don't remember if Karen said why that was the case.
I don't know. I think it was like a law or something.
Like, would it be a, what's it called?
Like a conflict of interest or something?
Thank you.
I think I don't remember what she said about it. I won't guess. I remember.
The men walk up 13 stairs. H.H. Holmes is between the two priests, the sheriff, and his personal lawyer. His mustache was slightly trimmed. However, one reporter that was there in attendance said that he, quote, looked dead already. And this was something I found quite weird. Holmes was imprisoned for quite a while. So he was writing to the media, and they would come in and either take a photo or do an illustration. And Holmes's facial features changed quite drastically over the time he was in lockup. So much so, and he'll tell the media, and you'll see this in his letters to the media, that he's getting a more demonic appearance.
Oh.
The guilt is weighing on him. The victims are talking to him in his sleep. He's having nightmares. He is physically changing.
To one reporter, he revealed, I am convinced that since my imprisonment, I have changed woefully and gruesomely from what I was formerly in feature and figure. My features are assuming a pronounced satanical cast. I have become afflicted with that dread disease, rare but terrible, with which physicians are acquainted, but over which they have no control whatsoever. That disease is a malfunction or distortion of the osseous parts. My head and face are gradually assuming an elongated shape. I believe fully that I am growing to resemble the devil, that the similitude is almost completed. That's a real disease. We did a headline about that.
That is a real disease.
Yes.
It's called the devil disease. It's creepy. Let me show you. What is it? Is it called the devil disease?
Or the demon. It was like something.
Face disease. Yeah. So.
Or demon face syndrome.
Demon face syndrome. Yeah.
It does sound familiar.
Demon faced. Is that what it is? Face. Demon face disorder. Okay, so the real term is prosopometamorphosia, but it is basically...
But it makes people think they're seeing demonic faces. It doesn't actually transform people's faces.
Oh, I thought it was a real disorder.
I don't think so, but there was that one guy that we had covered on that article, but I couldn't really tell.
That one guy had it. So it's basically when...
I thought
it is a real disorder because that one guy had it, but it's when your face starts stretching back like this. You see how it's pushed back? Your face pushes back and you look more demonic. You see how hers is like pushing back?
That's a cartoon. That's not a real picture.
When he looks at faces. No, it's the I think that one article was maybe just confusing, but it's a perception that of the individual. That's what it says.
I thought it was a real thing. Like going through the papers and seeing the illustrations, you can see that he was definitely changing, but it was was more like he was being emaciated, sort of like going that route. But you remember the one reporter that saw him on the day of his death said, quote, he looked dead already. And he said to the reporter that he is assuming a pronounced satanical cast. Like his face is changing, man. Although most of the 51 people in attendance did not see his face, because he said that he was so guilt-ridden by his actions, by his crimes, that he requested to wear a hood the entire time. Now this is not standard procedure.
No, I thought the person that the guy that makes
the executioner.
Yeah, thank you. He wears a hood.
Good point.
He just walked up these stairs, and this is it. You know, we're 2 minutes away from this, and he gives his final speech, which we're not going to read because it's more of, you know, I just want to set the record straight. I didn't do it. I'm innocent, sort of things. And the only two people I killed was because of his malpractice, and I feel terrible. But the whole time he's been in prison, he's been saying how awful he feels and all this stuff. And he did release a confession where he killed 57 people and all the murder castle and stuff like that, which we're going to get to. But we're talking about the day he is going to be hanged. He is on the gallows, on the platform, and the executioner is there, the two priests, the sheriff, the warden, they're all there. And he is cordial with everyone. He thanks the executioner. He thanks the sheriff, everyone. They're all friends with him at this point. The priest then motioned the condemned man to kneel, and he did. At this point, there was a crucifix around Holmes's neck, and he began grasping it. He's kneeling on the platform. The reason you kneel is so the executioner can easily put the noose around your neck and then tighten it up. So he's kneeling down. The noose is placed around his neck. It is tightened really tight so it can break that neck. And he is already gasping, you know, because it's a little too tight. And he says, goodbye, everyone. Now keep in mind, he's wearing his hood. While on the platform, he shakes hands with everyone. And one reporter said, quote, he was the coolest of the entire party, just completely calm. They asked, are you ready? Yes, goodbye. And then the floor splits, and then the body drops down and the neck breaks.
From the Evening World Herald, the knot had become jammed, and the best efforts of the doctors failed to loosen it as they attempted to remove the noose from about the neck. The head was twisted about from side to side in the unavailing attempt, and finally it was decided to cut the rope. From The Torture Doctor by David Frank, at exactly 10:12:30, the blackboards on which Holmes stood ported in the middle, and down through the opening his body fell, stopping with a jerk that knocked his head to one side and sent his legs swinging out toward the spectators. The contortions lasted for a minute, the body turning round and round, and the legs swaying backwards and forwards, as if the man were struggling to break the merciless rope. The back and chest heaved, the fingers opened and closed repeatedly, and there were twitching about the exposed neck.
This condemned prisoner is now dead. This man's neck is broken. The execution went smoothly. The black cap removed.
I'm not convinced it was him.
How would you not be convinced?
Because he had to wear a hood.
No, they removed the black cap to make sure everything was right. Quote, the dead man's face was a thing too ghastly for description, and even the doctors turned from it. Perhaps the devil really was killed this morning. Immediately after the hood was taken off and the doctors turned away in horror, H.H. Holmes's lawyer, Samuel Rotan, 6'3", broad shoulders, heavily built, stands in front of the hanging body. The body is eventually cut down, and he's standing right in front of it, and he then instructs everybody to leave. The warden, the sheriff, they start to scoff. You can't do this. As per our agreement of what you had made with Mr. Holmes, this is how it's supposed to go. Everyone is supposed to leave, and I'm supposed to guard the body. He had promised the sheriff and the warden, and as well as other people, that he would donate his mass fortune to charities of their choosing. This is how he got these special perks. He got to wear the hood. He got to be with his lawyer during the execution. All these little things was awarded to him because he was wealthy and he played the system.
And he would donate it to whatever they wanted to.
Mm-hmm. And they knew the deal. So even the warden and the sheriff, they had to leave. Right now, it's just this man's body, his dead body on the floor, the gallows, stood over by his own lawyer. At this point, 2 detectives come in, 2 very well-dressed detectives with bowler hats. They are from the Pinkertons, the very famous Pinkertons, which is still an agency.
Is it? I didn't know that.
Can anyone tell me the motto?
I don't know the motto.
One in the pink, 2 in the stink.
That's it, Jen. 1 in the pink, 2 in the stink. Their motto is "We never sleep."
What is the Pinkertons? I don't even know what it is.
It's a detective agency.
It's a very it's a detective agency who caught people like Holmes, and they're the best ever. I can't remember who all they caught, but some big criminals. Anyway, these 2 Pinkerton detectives come in and they stand guard over the body. H.H. Holmes, at great expense to his personal wealth, had hired both of these Pinkerton detectives to watch over his body. At this point, it's about 11:30. A J.J. O'Rourke, the undertaker, pulls up. He's also been hired through H.H. Holmes and his interest. He pulls up in his wagon shortly before noon. In the back is an ordinary pine box, which H.H. Holmes will be placed inside. So that is the execution of H.H. Holmes. I read a book that is very interesting. It is from the great-great-grandson of Herman Mudgett, H.H. Holmes. This guy's name is Jeff Mudgett. He wrote a memoir about some things that he came across. Now, as a child, Jeff Mudgett would intentionally call his grandfather, so, the son of H.H. Holmes, which is Jeff's grandfather.
Right.
He would intentionally call his grandfather Uncle Bert. He's not an uncle, he's his grandfather. But to Jeff Mudgett, who is still alive, he's the one who wrote this book I was reading, he would call him uncle because, quote, he didn't deserve that honor. To be called Grandpa. So this is Holmes' son, right? He remembers the worst of Grandpa Bert. So much so that Jeff goes through this whole thing of not crying at the funeral. He just could not do it. Why would people cry for this man? This man was just cold, He was just not a good man, Now, Grandpa Bert didn't leave much to the family, especially Jeff, the grandson. Jesse James, yeah, that's right. Andolin says the Pinkertons got Jesse James. I feel like if I was an outlaw, the Pinkertons would get me,
So you agree that you couldn't escape?
The Spock shock. What the fuck? Are you still talking about the pink thing?
Yep. It's hard not to watch the chat and start cracking up while you're being very serious.
So, all right, you have 2 detective Pinkertons and then 1 decomposing body. So it basically is 2 pinks, 1 stink. So
there you go.
He remembers the worst of his grandfather. And not only that, the grandfather didn't leave him much, just a bunch of fishing stuff. Grandpa loved the fish. He would spend hours and hours away from his wife and family, even days sometimes, just all across the lands fishing. So what he left to Jeff was all of his fishing equipment, fishing boxes, tackle boxes, this, that, and the other. Now, at this point, Jeff already knew, and he knew after the funeral, he didn't know as a kid, but he knew like in his adulthood who his great grandfather was. It was something you did not talk about in the Mudgett home. Everyone knew what it was, that it was this evil man and what he did, but you did not talk about it. But everyone knew it, right? So one day he goes and he looks in the fishing stuff, all the stuff that his grandpa left him. And he starts going through them, these lures and these tackles, the striped bass lures, the catfish lures, the hooks, all this stuff is just stuffed in here. And everything looked like it's been experienced a lot. Everything looks like it's been used a lot. It's been, thoroughly taken care of, but also used a lot. And there's a lot of it. So he's looking through this tackle box and there's just layers on top of layers, string and hooks and all this stuff. Eventually he pulls out the last shelf of this tackle box and he noticed something odd about the bottom of the box. There was a little latch that attached to the bottom. He's like, that's kind of weird. weird. What is this? He unclips the latch. He raises this little lid, and it's, what is this, a false door? This is smell that immediately comes out, this putrefaction, something that has been in there forever. Just that musty, just comes up, and you can almost see it. Sure enough, it's a false bottom. He looks in there, and he sees a few things. He dumps them out. What falls to the ground is a map and 2 journals, 2 written journals. These things have been in there for nearly a century.
Wow.
They're decrepit. This map has been marked up in several locations. They're not annotated, just marked up specific spots. This is from Jeff's own words.
I turned back to the inside front cover where the name H.H. Holmes demanded my attention. The words were signed in big flowing letters.
I mean, that's nothing weird. He did have journals. Whatever. Maybe my grandfather got them, put them in there, and just kind of hid them away forever. Jeff starts going through this. And in his book, so it's a really good book because I've read one more book like this, but it seems like the author is trying to be vulnerable, and it makes it like raw. Like he talks about his struggles that he's going through. Like, am I going to be like this man? Am I turning into him? He talks about how he has some close calls where he kind of loses his mind. So these journals, this is pretty neat, right? I mean, you got some true crime memorabilia here. He was executed 1896. Now you got the journals. That's awesome, man. So I was like, that's so cool. Anyway, Jeff talks about he started flipping through them, when he had some time. He started to see some kind of weird things. There were journal entries, and some of them didn't match up to the timeline which he was killed. One of them was written in 1900. Well, that can't be right. This can't. What?
I just had a feeling.
I don't know what's going to happen.
No, I don't. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm just saying. Did I not say?
What?
It's getting good.
It was just one thing. I'm never right about anything. So I was just kind of like excited that I was maybe right about something.
The dates, some of the dates may have made sense. Like one in 1888. Can you read the one in 1888?
One entry from 1888 read, "Bit by bit, I became aware of the many nuances this city had to offer. At the same time, I fought to maintain self-control over the seductive nature of my new surroundings within this most compacted area of humanity. However, I made note to remember, and fondly so, the minutiae of New York in order to take full advantage upon my return from Europe."
And that's kind of weird. What the fuck was that?
Shock. And what Andalyn just said.
Oh, I wasn't thinking that.
Andalyn said, she's thinking what we are. He's Jack the Ripper, yo.
So are you telling me that H.H. Holmes could be Jack the R, J the R, J to the R, Jr.? Are you telling me that Holmes could be Jack the Ripper? I don't believe it. Another entry said, quote, "Early the next morning, another victim had been identified and led to a suitable location. The space was behind a small house cluttered with refuse and presenting perfect seclusion. The street was dark and strangely uninhabited for having so many tight dwellings and long rows huddled upon it. This one was particularly appealing due to its separation by a large fence that divided the 2 neighboring dwellings." I do remember that fence and what he's talking about. Doing the Jack the Ripper story. I can't remember her name, but I do remember that exact fence he's talking about. Anyway, but that could be just a joke, right? But what about some of the entries from the 1900s? Some going up to 1920. Okay, all right.
How is that possible if he was executed? Guess what? He wasn't.
So no, here's the thing. The man in the grave is H.H. Holmes. 51 people saw him hang until he was dead.
No, they saw a man who was called H.H. Holmes with a thing on his face.
So what, is just someone who volunteered? That doesn't make any sense.
No, they didn't volunteer. They took another criminal.
Surely this is Holmes, even though there are some inconsistencies that my mind can't even get past. For instance, like, why hire your own security detail at great expense, 2 Pinkerton detectives to watch over your body in the grave, to stand by your grave for nearly a week as your body decomposed?
So the 2 Pinkertons would have had to have been pretty, like, they would have been bribed because they would have known.
No, I'm not saying it's not him. I'm just saying.
I'm
saying it's not him, but I'm also saying maybe they weren't real Pinkertons.
Yeah.
No, they were real Pinkertons.
Okay.
Usually bodies are also autopsied right after death. This has been the case since the medical community existed. Literally since like the 1500s. Leonardo da Vinci, I remember him talking about in one of those books I read that the autopsies were done every time, even after executions. There is no way to get out of that.
Absolutely, this is because you go back to the fact that you said they made a deal
with him
about money. So he could have made a deal so that they take some unfortunate soul who was replace the actual H.H. Holmes.
But he had made a statement.
He said goodbye.
Now, he has a full statement. It's him denying everything. But all right, let me just get on with this.
Whatever.
No autopsy was ever done, which is weird, right? They should have done an autopsy, right? He wore a hood, which is not normal, but he requested it.
From Bloodstains by Jeff Mudgett, the executioners were awaiting at the top. They seemed genuinely surprised to see that the prisoner was wearing the hood. So much so, in fact, that the sheriff removed the garment at once, taking a long, slow look at the prisoner.
Not only that, but what about this after his death, this evil eye? Trial of death follows curse of evil eye. And this is from the Akron Beacon Journal, 1912. It says, Philadelphians are recalling the baleful glare of the madman's eye. Bad luck seems to have followed for those connected to the case. Okay, let me see. It says, quote, one by one, the officials who were connected with the trial have fallen victims. The detective's death was first. The Judge Mitchell Arnold, he died after suffering great agony. The lawyer, the jurors, several people, about 20 people connected with his case starts dying.
That reminds me of that one that we did.
Yeah.
Jake Bird, yeah. 6 months after the hanging, Howard Perkins, who was the superintendent who looked into H.H. Holmes's eyes and saw his glance. 6 months after the hanging, Perkins died of a self-inflicted pistol shot. For weeks, in fact, since the hanging of Holmes, he had passed restless nights, and despite the attention of physicians and his family, did not sleep. Always the evil eye was on him. It stared at him from the dark corners of his room and peered into the privacy of his bedchamber. He could no longer resist its evil influence, and after hours of suffering, he arose from his bed early on the morning of November and shot himself.
Wow.
There is many cases like this, but that's superstitious stuff. Holmes couldn't be connected with that.
No.
No.
Let's go to 2017. Samantha Cox, a scholar at the Pennsylvania Museum, and a Janet Monge, a physical anthropology collection at the Penn Museum. Their task is simple. Their task is to unearth the grave of this serial killer who has been in the grave for 121 years.
From Fox News article, following the hanging, rumors spread far and wide that Holmes, a master conman and manipulator, had paid off prison guards to hang a cadaver or some unsuspecting fellow inmate in his place and let him slip off into hiding in South America. Now, almost 121 years later, and following a request from a descendant of Holmes, a Pennsylvania court has issued an order to have the alleged remains of the murderer dug up from his unmarked grave in Holy Cross Cemetery outside of Philadelphia.
Jeff Mudgett is the one that initiated this. He said, I have journal entries here of more crimes.
And well past the dates.
More crimes done, even crimes documented in South America.
Oh.
From South America to every part of the world. It seemed whoever had this journal, which was not Grandpa.
No.
Because he never traveled. Whoever wrote in this journal, which was labeled H.H. Holmes, was heavily documenting his life and his crimes past the execution date. So Jeff says, let's get a judge order and dig it up. And if it's him,
case closed.
He said, I'll publicly apologize.
Mm-hmm.
So they start digging. So this was at the Holy Cross Cemetery, which was let's see where this is.
My question that just popped into my head was what year was Jeff born, and was it documented that H.H. Holmes had children?
H.H. Holmes had a lot of children, actually.
Interesting.
H.H. Holmes was, from what I've known so far, a real ladies' man. In fact, I was reading one book. It said, in today's terms, you would refer to him like as a pretty boy, like immaculately dressed, wealthy. He could stop, a supermodel, a rich supermodel, and just stare into her eyes, and she would be at his beck and call.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, but as we go through the murder castle, it's going to be very obvious that he did not do this alone. He had assistants helping him do this. And if we believe the thing with the Jack the Ripper, he was doing that specifically for harvesting organs, which he sold, which if you remember when we did Jack the Ripper, there was someone, a doctor who made a request to buy organs from the United States.
Yep.
That is odd.
And he was wearing a
bowler hat.
No, he was wearing the Sherlock Holmes hat.
Yeah, which is
No,
it's the
Holmes
Fox.
hat's different.
Oh, okay.
Fox something hat, right?
All right, this is the cemetery where he is buried. Actually, this is it right here. I think this is do you see?
Like it's like dug up.
Yeah, I think that's where, so it's an unmarked grave and they dug it up.
Wow.
Now, if you ask Jeff, that is not his grandfather, great-great-grandfather in the grave. All right, so they start digging up this grave at the Holy Cross Cemetery and they dig about 6 feet down, and guess what? There's a pine box. If you go back to the
What
Undertaker,
they should be finding.
the Undertaker was carrying in a pine box, the exact same one, size, dimensions, everything matches up. This has got to be it. This is an unmarked grave, no headstone, and there's a grave in it.
Were there a lot of unmarked graves though? Like
No. There's like unmarked graves are specifically reserved for people that like the law doesn't want dug up. So even like a pauper's grave, like you'll have like little plaques
Markers.
at least, like at least a marker, even if it's like unknown. They hide unmarked
Ones like
graves.
these.
It's like Edward Gein's body. Like no one knows where it is. And usually they'll hide it like in between two other graves.
And wouldn't it also like help detract the attention? Because like everyone would want to like go
visit the grave.
Yeah.
That's
go
exactly what I-
visit the grave and then find out it may not be him. That'd be weird.
Or just either destroy it, vandalize it, or pay weird homage to it. You know what I mean? Like it could be any of those things.
Well, if you ask Jeff Mudgett, he says that his great-great-grandfather, the reason he hired the Pinkertons is because he didn't want people to dig up the graves and be like, wait, this isn't him. Let's go back.
Andolin said grave robbers were huge back then. So that's a good point. Like if to protect someone of that notoriety. That makes sense. That does make sense. I get that. Okay.
And going back to, remember I talked about how his face was taking another form. Literally, his appearance has changed. He wrote that since I've been in prison, I have changed woefully and gruesomely. Are you telling me that he is prepping the United States media to accept another man's face as his own?
Yeah, absolutely. As soon as you said that, that's where my thought went.
Like grooming them.
Because because this guy had no remorse. Anyway, they start digging.
From the Philly Voice, in fact, the wood was pristine. You could see the yellow in the pine, Cox said. It took 3 days to excavate the coffin, and they needed a saw to open it. To their astonishment, it was empty. The 5 days they had budgeted to find Holmes was already up, and they still had no remains.
So this is what they found. And that's where I'm stopping.
Of course it is. Shit.
What?
Well, I didn't know about this. This is pretty recent.
Yeah, it's pretty recent. So I'm gonna stop it there. If you've heard of the recent things with H.H. Holmes and all this, you probably know where this is going. But
if you haven't, don't look it up.
And don't tell us. Don't spoil it for me and Jen, please.
Yeah.
So this story is going to be on his crimes that we know of, not really the ones that the diaries claim. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be more of what we do know.
Sable, this is for you.
But we did. So we're going to do like like all of the stuff, like the murder house and everything. Like he didn't just kill in this murder house, even though that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Still researching it. So.
Oh, I can't wait to hear more. I did not know any of this. So, I mean, I know it's probably one of the most popular serial killers in history. And a lot's, known about him.
Yeah, the only thing I really know about H.H. Holmes is the name and he had the murder house. That's really all I know.
Well, I mean,
and that they made American Horror Story Hotel. They kind of
Oh, did they?
There has been
took from him a little bit.
There's been a lot of speculation that he may have been Jack the Ripper. And if you ask Jeff Mudgett, yes and no. He had an assistant who he trained, which we do see he has done before. And he trained this assistant because he was actually selling these organs and harvesting these bodies. He was an expert in that. He made a lot of his money selling skeletons to the medical schools because they needed skeletons and they needed cadavers. So he would sell both.
Wow.
And no one would ask questions because
it's illegal to do what he was doing, obviously.
Well, exactly. Everyone knew it was illegal. That's where you had the Birkin hair. Remember?
Yeah.
So
damn. Oh, I cannot wait to get into this.
Very
even
exciting.
More.
Yes.
Well, Jacob, he was apparently harvesting so many that he needed to train someone to do it. I mean, he was making a ton of money with this. A lot of money.
So from his wealth was mostly generated from selling these bodies to the medical, community.
That and insurance scams. So you take out $10,000 on yourself and then we kill you, but you're in on it, right? So we just substitute a body for it.
Sweet.
I'm gonna do some more research. I hope that was okay.
It was.
It was great.
It was all right.
It was great. A lot of build up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of build up, and then
some alone time.
One
needed.
last jerk.
Oh man, Excelente. All right, well, perhaps we will do some headlines a little bit later if y'all want to.
Well, thanks for being here. Hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll be back here in a little bit.
Run this shit.